Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, Intro to TextExpander. I am Justine, and my co-host today is Christiane, and we are from the customer team. It's still a little early today, and I see we still have a few people that are joining us. So while we are waiting for the top of the hour, why don't you let us know where you're all tuning in from today? Christiane and I were actually just talking about how the weather is getting kind of crazy here in the Northeast. I think you said it was raining pretty hard in Virginia, right, Christiane?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we're gonna get some rain here in Boston too. So any sunshine that you have wherever you are, if you want to send them over to the Northeast, we will gladly take that. Let's see who we have.
Thanks, Sarah, for telling us you're in Vancouver. That's excellent.
Oh,
Who
I
else?
love Vancouver. It's so beautiful there.
Oh, yes.
Do we have anyone else who wants to share where they're tuning in from today? At least I can say that we have spring is around the corner. So we are going to get some warm weather soon if you don't have it where you are now.
Right. Steve is in Albuquerque, and he says there's plenty of sunshine there.
I will trade you, Steve. Let's trade.
And Nick chimed in from the United Kingdom. And Stephen, also no sunshine, just rain.
Everyone here on the East Coast is suffering today, but soon spring is here.
What was that saying? April showers bring May flowers.
There you go.
Not quite there yet, but
soon. Okay. So thank you everyone again for joining. We're going to get started in about a minute or so. In the meantime, if you also want to share some of the other productivity apps that you're using, feel free to drop them in the chat. We always love learning about other tools out there to help us save time.
I personally love using Notion. I use it to keep track of a lot of my projects and ongoing business,
Oh, that's such a great one. And Cloud App is really such a time saver for me. I take so many screenshots and recording and GIFs. It's the best.
Indeed.
Active words. That's something that I'm gonna have to look up, Steve. And it seems like Mauricio, I believe everyone can hear me so far, and I believe everyone can see my screen so far. If you're having mic issues, you may just have to give GoToWebinar permission to use the hardware that you're using. Sometimes that happens to me, but I think we're good on sound on our end.
I was just typing an answer, but you said it faster than I could type it.
Oh, thank you. Okay, we are right over the top of the hour, and I think we have a great audience so far. So why don't we go ahead and get started, and everyone else can continue to trickle in. Sound good? Perfect. So once again, thank you for joining today's Intro to TextExpander's webinar. I'm Justine and Christiane, and we are from the customer team. Christiane is going to be my co-host for today, so if you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat box and she will answer them as quickly as possible. If she can't get to them in the chat though, don't worry, we will have time at the end for questions where we can answer some of your questions live. This webinar is also going to be recorded, so don't worry about trying to catch everything now. You will receive a link after today's webinar to take a look at that at your leisure. Also, feel free to share that webinar link with other people who you think may benefit. We want to make sure that everyone who uses TextExpander or who is interested in using TextExpander can reap all of those benefits and resources that we have. And speaking of resources, I wanted to share with you all some of the support resources that we have here at TextExpander. So we do have a great support page that includes how-tos, tips and tricks. And if you have any questions about using TextExpander, you can go ahead and reach out to us at our support chat here. Christine will leave the link to our support in the chat box as well. We also have webinars, which you are attending one today. So once again, thank you for attending today's beginners webinar. But we also have advanced webinars, webinars for teams, and some webinars that talk about how you can use TextExpander in the industry. Lastly, we have public groups, which are groups of snippets that everyday TextExpander users have created for all of us to share and use together. So if you're ever wondering how other people are using TextExpander, you can head over to our public groups and you can subscribe to those public groups and use them as well. So we are going to cover a lot today, but once again, these are all resources that you will receive after today's webinar, including this training deck that I'm going over right now. And after everything that we've covered, I hope that you are inspired to use TextExpander in new ways. I hope that you can complete your daily tasks more efficiently, and I hope that you become a TextExpander champion. So let's get into what TextExpander actually is. TextExpander uses short text called abbreviations, and it transforms them into longer repetitive text called snippets. I'll show you what a snippet is in just 1 second, but TextExpander is pretty much a autocomplete or a copy and paste on steroids. So what that means is it's going to save you a ton of time. It's going to ease repetition fatigue because you won't have to do repetitive tasks so much with TextExpander. And it's also going to act as your second brain. And if you're wondering if TextExpander is the tool for you, I can assure you that if you are someone who types at all, TextExpander is going to save you time and boost your productivity. So whether you are in customer support, or if you're an attorney or a nurse, or if you just want to send emails back and forth to your family and friends, TextExpander will help you save time and reduce that repetitiveness. Now, speaking back on what TextExpander actually is, I want to actually share with you our TextExpander.com and the TextExpander app. Oops, sorry about that. There we go. So TextExpander is an ecosystem that includes the TextExpander app, which is here on the right, and TextExpander.com. So if you're an admin or if you need to download the TextExpander app, you will spend a lot of your time here on TextExpander.com. Now, it's important to note that you need to download the app in order to expand snippets. So if you're a first-time TextExpander user, you want to make sure you head over to TextExpander.com, go down to get the app on your left, and download the TextExpander app so you can expand your snippets. Now, if you don't have TextExpander downloaded right now, no worries, but if you do have it downloaded, I encourage you to follow along on today's webinar. So let's get started. I'm going to close this website and we are going to expand our first snippet. So I promised you earlier during today's webinar that I was going to expand our emails or our first snippet together, so let's do that. But first, I'm going to turn off my camera to give you some more real estate on your screen, and we can focus a bit more on the actual app. Okay, perfect. So let's expand our first snippet together. If you wouldn't mind, bring your attention to the left on my email application. And today we are going to spend our time primarily in the email application because most people write emails pretty much every day. So this is a great way to show you a very applicable way to use TextExpander as soon as you begin using it. So I'm going to expand someone's email address in this two fields of my email. I'm going to type a few characters. And just like that, you will notice that this email address was expanded. Now I get snippet expansions can happen pretty fast, so let me go ahead and do that one more time. I'm going to type a few characters, which are my abbreviations. And once again, I've expanded someone's email address. So this is a great way to realize that now you can use TextExpander as kind of a repository for email addresses. And if there are a few people that you email pretty often or a few people who you share this email address with, you can use TextExpander to store your email addresses there without having to worry about remembering them or copying and paste them. So I'm going to leave that email snippet there. And on today's webinar, we are going to create an email for us to follow up with a few potential customers that we've met at a virtual conference. And this is how I want the email to look at the very end of today's webinar. So I'm going to place my cursor here in the subject field and expand our first snippet together, just to give you a preview of what we're going to create together. I'm typing my abbreviation in the subject field, and you'll notice that there's a pop-up menu here, or this pop-up dialog here. Now this will allow us to complete our snippet before we expand it. And I'm going to get into the details of this just a little later. So let me jump ahead here and fill out this information. Scroll down, select OK. And this is how our email will look at the end of today's webinar. You'll notice that I was able to create a subject snippet or fill out my subject field with my body field with only using one snippet. So I have a subject here, a greeting, and an email body. And I have my closure here, including my signature along with my TextExpander logo. So why don't we go ahead and create this snippet together? But first, let's explore the TextExpander app. So please bring your attention over to the right, where we will work on exploring TextExpander together and creating this snippet together. So the first thing you're going to want to do is select New Snippet in the top left. I want to make sure that my snippets are being added to the group that I want them to be. So I'm going to actually select this gray bar, Webinar, and then select New Snippet. And that means that any snippet that I create right now will be added to my webinar group. So at the top, I have my content menu, and this will allow you to choose between different types of formatted text or text that your snippet will expand. So you'll see that formatted text and pictures was actually selected by default. You can change this in the preferences depending on your needs, but formatted text and pictures will allow me to expand snippets that have enriched features such as bolded text, including images or including hyperlinks. Plain text snippets will allow you to expand those snippets and expand in the format that you are expanding that snippet. So there are no more additional enriched features here. When you select plain text snippet or plain text content, it will expand in that same format that you were expanding it in. You'll also notice that we have Shell script, Apple script, and JavaScript because we actually do support those as well. So for today's webinar, we are going to work primarily in formatted text and pictures. And underneath the content menu, you'll notice that there are this 2 lines of, and this is called our editing bar. Our editing bar allows you to choose the enriched features that you would like to be included in your formatted text and pictures. Underneath the editing bar, you'll see on my screen, it looks like a white space, but it may look a bit different depending on your settings for your TextExpander. But this here is going to be our snippet editor. This is where you will add the content of your snippet. So today we will write our email body here and our email subject here because this is what we are actually expanding. Underneath the snippet editor is our label field. Now the label field is where you will name your snippet to make sure that it is that people who need your snippet in the future can easily find it. So you want to make sure that you have a great naming convention, something that defines what your snippet is actually being used for. Underneath the label field, we have our abbreviation field. And I've talked about abbreviations before, you've seen me use them. And these are the short text that you use to trigger or expand your snippet. Now, your abbreviations, you want to make sure that they are easy to type, easy to remember, and simple. And you want to also make sure that they include a prefix, which is a few short codes or text, or a few short characters that will allow you to not expand your abbreviation accidentally. And we will talk a bit more about that when we head over to group settings later. You'll also notice right next to the label field, there is an icon that looks similar to an eye. This will allow you to preview your snippets before expanding them to make sure they look exactly how you need them. So I know that was a bit of a mouthful, but let's go ahead and create our first snippet together. So As we noticed, or as we talked about before, we had a snippet that included a subject field and a body. So let's try to create that together. Except before we create a snippet that includes our subject within our email body, we are just going to create a subject field together. So we're just going to create a snippet that we can use as our subject by itself. Now, here in the snippet editor, you are able to either type your content or your text directly in the snippet editor, or you can copy and paste it. For today's webinar, I'm going to primarily copy and paste this information because I want to make sure that I don't have any typos. So let me grab my information from my other screen and make sure we're good to go. Sorry, 1 second. Perfect. Let me grab my subject. And that subject is, it was great meeting you today. So I'm going to paste my subject here in the snippet editor. Underneath the snippet editor, let's add our label. And once again, I want to make sure this is something easily searchable. And I'm going to make this label meet and greet. Underneath the abbreviation, let's go ahead, or underneath label, let's add our abbreviation. And my abbreviation is going to have a semi-prefix, and that's going to be CON. And you'll notice that next to the abbreviation, there was a warning label that popped up. Now, this warning label is letting me know that this is a conflicting abbreviation. And what that means is if I were to keep this abbreviation this way, there's a possibility that I would accidentally trigger other snippets. So we want to make sure that our abbreviation never has a warning label next to it. So with that being said, let's finish this abbreviation and add meet. So I have my content in my snippet editor, I have my label, and I have my abbreviation. This is the makings of a perfect snippet. Let's head over to our email on the left and expand our snippet together. CON meet. Awesome. It was great virtually meeting you today. So I hope that you were following along if you were able to, and you were able to expand a snippet with me today. I'm going to do that one more time. Perfect. So we've expanded our first subject field together. Now that we got the basics down, I think we're ready to take it a bit further. Let's create that fancy snippet with all those enriched features together. I'm going to head over to new snippet again. We have our content already selected to formatted text and pictures, thanks to our default preferences that we've set. Now let's head over to our snippet editor and continue to add some content. I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste the majority of the time here, but feel free to do it the way that you choose best. So we want to start off here by adding the subject. And that subject is, it was great meeting you today. Now, in order to get from the subject line in my email to the email body, we want to add it. The only way for me to get from my subject to my email body is to actually tab through. So with that being said, we need to figure out a way to tab through within TextExpander. And to do that, you're going to head to your editing bar and select the little icon that looks like a keyboard. This is our keyboard macros. And macros are key presses that mimic the presses that you see on your keyboard. So let's scroll down to tab, which will allow me to tab from my subject field to my email body. And here you'll notice that there is not a space before or after, because the tab will give you the space that you need here. So we can select our first line of our email directly after tab without adding any additional spaces. So let me say hello to the person that I would like to send this email to. Except, as I mentioned before, this is a follow-up email for virtual conferences, meaning I'm probably going to want to send this email to multiple different people. And the best way to do that, the best way to be prompted for that, is what we call in TextExpander a fill-in. So fill-ins will act as a prompt or a fill in the blank when you are expanding your snippet. So let's select single line field. which single line field will prompt you to enter in one single line of text. When I select the single line field, you'll notice that this dialog box came up, which is prompting me to enter in a name. This is what will prompt me what to enter into the fill-in. So because I'm adding someone's name here, I'm actually going to name this field name. Underneath name, you'll notice that there's a default value field. Default value means that this will be populated as to what you choose in here every time you expand the snippet. Because I am working with multiple different people and this name will change often, I'm actually going to leave this default value blank. So now we have hello name. Let's finish adding the rest of the content to our snippet editor. So we're going to head over to the body of our email. And I want to let them know that it was great chatting with them during one of the conferences that we've met together. So I'm just pasting that here in the snippet editor. So it was great chatting with you during the. So I had the pleasure of being able to attend multiple different virtual conferences. So the chances are I'm probably sending this email to multiple people that I've met in multiple different areas. So I want to be able to choose which conference I'm referring to when I speak to this specific customer. Once again, we'll head over to fill-ins, except this time we are going to select a pop-up menu. Now, a pop-up menu will allow you to have multiple different options and choose which option you would like to expand when you are expanding your snippet. Just like the single line field, we will name what this pop-up menu is for, and we're going to name this conferences. And then let's add our options or our conference options here. So I went to a mixer, I went to a world conference, and I actually attended one more conference, but I don't see an option here. So in order to add an extra option, you'll head over to your bottom left, select the add button to add an additional option, or select the minus button to take away an option. So let's select the plus sign here. And let me add my one last option, or the last conference I attended was virtual conference. Now on the left of these option fields, you'll notice that there are these little radio buttons here. These buttons allow you to choose which one of your options you would like to have expanded by default. So I'm going to select the mixer, and you can also drag and drop the order of these options using this drag and drop menu to the right of the radio button. So once you have your options in the order that you would like, go ahead and select OK. So far we have our key presses, we have our single line field, and we have our pop-up menu. Let's see what else we can add. So while I was speaking with Michelle, she let me know that she wanted to send me some postcards from her company. So I want to send her my address to make sure that she can share those postcards with me. So I'm going to copy this last line here to let her know that she can have my address. So I hope to connect soon. Please see my address below. Now, in order to add my address, I could very well add it here directly in the snippet editor, but I want to show you a different way to use another fill-in or another prompt, and that's going to be the multi-line field. So select fill-in in the editing bar and scroll down to multi-line field. So it's very similar to a single line field. So this information that you fill out here will be the same as you would as if it was a single line field, except multi-line fields allow you to add multiple lines of text. So just like an address, which includes maybe 3 or 4 lines, you can use a multi-line field instead of a single line field for that. So I'm going to name this one address. And this time around, because my address doesn't change very often, I'm actually going to make it a default value here. So I'm going to copy and paste it here. And then that way, my address is already expanded by default. I don't have to worry about typing it in when I expand the snippet. Once you have your default value filled out, or if you decide to leave it blank, go ahead and select OK in the bottom right. So now we have our address added with our multi-line field. Here's our address below. So now for closer, I want to be able to give Michelle the ability to schedule additional time with me on my calendar. So let me paste that here. If you'd like to schedule some additional time, here's a link. Now, how do we include a hyperlink into TextExpander? Let me just copy my link first. And what you're going to want to do is head to the editing bar again, and on the far right, you'll notice that there is an insert URL button here. Select the insert URL button, and you can either paste your URL there, or you can text it directly or type it there directly. Once you have your URL inserted, I'm going to select OK. So once you've inserted your URL, you'll notice that your hyperlink has now turned blue, and when you hover over it, there is a line underneath, meaning that when this snippet is expanded, it is going to be a live link that whoever clicks on it will be able to schedule some time with you on your calendar. Last but not least, let's include that signature that we saw when I first expanded the snippet. So let me go ahead and copy this one more time. I'm sure you're used to me copying and pasting by now. So cheers, that's my name, and that is my title. Now let me go ahead and add that image, because that image is missing, which was my TextExpander logo. So the first thing you're gonna wanna do before you add an image to your signature or add an image to your snippet is to place your cursor exactly where you want your image to begin. So as you can see, my cursor is right underneath the C in my customer success title. I'm going to head to the editing bar again, and I'm going to go to the far left this time and select the insert image button. Now here you'll see that there is my finder where I can select the image that I would like to insert. It's important to note here though that TextExpander will not be able to edit or resize your image. So you want to make sure that your image is resized and edited to the perfection that you would like it to be before you insert it into TextExpander. So I'm going to select the logo that I would like to use today and select OK. So this is awesome. So far, our snippet is looking exactly how I want it to. Let's go ahead and label it and give it an abbreviation and expand it together. So the label for this abbreviation is going, or the label for this snippet is going to be meet and greet, or actually it's going to be conference follow-up. That one always trips me up. Conference follow-up. And then the abbreviation for this one is going to be Con Connect. Let's take a look at that warning label again. Con is letting me know that I already have a duplicate there, possibility. So we want to make sure, or a conflicting one. So we want to make sure that we complete this abbreviation. Perfect. Con Connect is our abbreviation. Let's head over to our email on the left and expand this snippet together. So because we have started our snippet with the subject line on the top line here, we want to make sure that we place our cursor exactly where we want the snippet to begin expanding. So you want to make sure that you are not expanding the snippet in the email body, better yet, in the subject, because the tab that we inserted will allow us to go from the subject to the email body. So let me expand my abbreviation here. Okay, and as you saw before, it was this box that populated for me to add some additional information. So let's go through the fill-ins that we've created together. So hello, name. So this is the prompt that I was telling you about before. This is our single line field that is reminding me to put someone's name here. Now this, it was great chatting during the mixer, is our pop-up menu that we created together. If you noticed before, I selected mixer as my default preference, so that's why it was chosen when I expanded the snippet, but you can select the arrow on the right and choose which conference you've attended this time. Underneath that is our multi-line field where I added my address, but you'll notice that I'm able to click inside of this gray box here and edit anything that needs to be edited. So if you add something as a default, it's not the set all be all. You have the ability to edit that when you're expanding it if need be. We have our hyperlinked Calendly here, so someone can schedule some additional time. And then we have our beautiful signature, including our image. Let's expand that together and select OK. So you've seen this before, but it's so cool now that I think we were able to run through how to create it together. So now you understand how we were able to move from the subject line to the email body. And we have our subject, we have our email body, and then we have our image for our emails for our signature. Let me expand that one more time. I think this is so cool. I love all the different fill-ins that we can do. It just shows you how many customizations you can make it to make it your own. So let me expand that one more time. Let me add Michelle's name. We'll keep the mixture the same this time. Our address looks good to go. Our link is blue, meaning it's nice and live. And let's select OK. Awesome. That is super cool. I love using formatted text and pictures for an enriched snippet, and I love using fill-ins in order to really customize anytime I communicate with someone or anytime I'm jotting down any notes. Fill-ins really, really always has my back. So before we move on, I want to show you a different way to add your email signature or any sort of text into an existing snippet. So what I'm referring to is something called inserting snippets or nested snippets. Nested snippets allow you to have one individual snippet, and you can insert them in any other snippet you have in your library. The cool thing about nested snippets, though, is that in the event that something changes, like let's say you get a promotion, so you have to update your email signature. You can change that email signature in one location, the original location, and it will update automatically everywhere that you have that snippet nested. So I love using the email signature as a perfect example because we hope that everyone gets promoted. So if you get promoted, you can update your signature and not have to worry about updating it 50 times or 100 times for however many times that you have your snippet nested somewhere. It's also a great way for to include phone numbers somewhere or any kind of contact information because those things sometimes change often as well. So let's create our nested snippet together. I'm going to remain in the connect snippet that we just created together, but I'm just going to erase the signature. Now I'm going to place my cursor where I want my snippet to be nested. And I'm going to go up to the editing bar, select that keyboard macros button again, and scroll all the way down to the bottom and select Insert Snippet. Now here is where you will insert the abbreviation of the original snippet. Now, if you look over to the left in my group snippets, you'll notice that there is a test.sig snippet underneath my testing group. This is the snippet that, that includes my original signature. So I'm going to add that entire abbreviation right here. Once I have that abbreviation filled out, you'll notice that the signature doesn't look expanded in with the logo like it did originally. It looks more familiar to some sort of fill-in. Let's see how that actually expands. I'm going to move over to my email and insert or add my abbreviation. If you scroll to the bottom, you'll notice that this snippet on the left, when it's expanded, looks different than the snippet on the right. So as you can see, I was able to nest the snippet and it actually expands in the expansion window. So let's select OK. And it looks the exact same as the snippet that we expanded together earlier. The only difference is if I were to go here and change my signature, I can expand this one more time. And if everything works correctly, that signature should be updated. So let's expand this one more time and see how cool that is. Let's review Michelle's. Awesome. My subject or my signature was changed from customer success to customer experience. And just like that, I don't have to worry about editing my signature in 50 different places. So I really hope that you all find some interesting ways to use nested snippets in the future. If you have any ideas, feel free to drop them in the chat box. I'd love to hear about them towards the end of the webinar. So we are at a great point right now. We've learned so much so far. We've talked about keyboard presses or keyboard macros, such as a tab, to get us from a subject field to an email body. And I want to touch on that really quickly. It doesn't stop at sending emails. If you have any forms that you would like to fill out, you can use keyboard macros and tabs in order to get from one field to the next. If you're in any CRMs, you can get from one field to the next. So anytime where you catch yourself touching the return key so much on your keyboard or touching the tab key on your keyboard, think about making it into a snippet. You can probably save a lot of valuable time there. We also have our single line fill in here for our name, which is going to act as our prompt. We have the ability to create our pop-up menu, our multi-line field, so we can add our address. We're also able to use or to insert a URL, which is complements of our formatted text and pictures content. And lastly, we were able to insert a fancy nested snippet and see how we were able to change that snippet in the original location and watch it update before our eyes. This is a great time to ask any questions in the chat box as well. So if you have any questions about what we've covered so far, feel free to add them to the chat box. Christiane does a great job of making sure that she answers as much as she can. So let's focus on organizing some of these snippets now that we have a few of them created. So if you look over to the left, this is going to be our groups list, our snippet groups list. And these are all the groups of snippets that I have created before. So if you've noticed, all the snippets that I've created today were included underneath my webinar group. Let's create a new group together and move them over to the new group that we create together. So let's select new group to the right of new snippet and add the name of the text of the snippet group that you would like to have. Let's name this one conferences. Underneath conferences, I encourage you all to add notes to all of your groups. It's just the perfect way to keep everyone on the same page and to remind you about why these snippets belong in these groups in the first place. So let's do that. We are using this to follow up with customers. Perfect. In 1 second. Okay, awesome. So underneath the notes section, we have our expand in preferences. So expand in is set to all applications by default, meaning that TextExpander will expand in all applications that you have on your computer. If you would like to remove some of those applications, you can select all applications except. Once you select all applications except, you get to choose which applications you would like to remove TextExpander from expanding in. So if there's any program that maybe has some important information that you would not like to have included on your TextExpander, or if there are any applications that you just don't want to have expanded there, you can select those here. And only these applications is very similar, except you can select which applications, you kind of cherry pick in particular which applications you would like to have TextExpander to expand in. In the event that you would like to disable TextExpander from expanding anywhere, you can select no applications at the very bottom. Now the expand when preferences will allow you to see or allow you to choose when your snippets expand. So white space precedes abbreviations mean that your snippets will expand only when there is a space before the abbreviation is typed. And that is how that's how the snippets were during today's webinar. All but letters and numbers precede abbreviations mean that your abbreviations will expand when there are characters such as maybe a comma or some sort of underscore there. So if at any time you need to expand a group of snippets before or after some sort of punctuation, choosing all the letters and numbers precedes abbreviation is the perfect choice for that. So any character precedes abbreviations is actually a tricky one. This will actually expand your abbreviation anytime it's typed, even if it's in the middle of a word. So you want to make sure that you choose this option with caution. underneath the expand when preferences, you'll notice that there is a prefix, and we've touched on prefixes lightly in the beginning of today's webinar. And this will allow you to really set some parameters for how you group your snippets. And as your library continues to grow, prefixes will allow you to better expand your prefixes with less abbreviation conflicts. So this is a great way for you to make sure that you keep your snippets organized and easily able to be expanded. So I am going to create a prefix for this group. And it might be confusing in a bit, and I'll get to that, but I'm going to add the prefix for this group is going to be CON. So CON for me means conferences. So anyone who uses this snippet group will know that any prefix or any snippet that has a prefix of CON is going to help me be successful when I'm working with conference follow-ups. So here at TextExpander, our support team, we use prefix SUP a lot for support, which helps us recognize that these snippets are our support snippets. Now let's add the snippets that we've created today to the group that we just created together. So you can drag and drop snippets just by selecting it and then dragging and dropping it into the appropriate group. And then we can do that again with the second one that we created. Now, one thing that's changed when I moved these snippets from the webinar group to the conference group is that there was this prefix. So the prefixes are the few characters that have the line underneath it. The prefix was added to the snippets that we already created. So earlier I said that I was making my own prefix, and that was CON. And now you'll notice that there's a double CON. So, and now that we have a group prefix, we can actually remove the CON that was a part of our abbreviation. So now technically the abbreviation is just connect. However, when we go to expand this snippet, it is going to be con.connect. Let me show you that using the subject that we created together. So I'm going to remove the prefix that I added to the abbreviation field. Now the abbreviation is just meet, but my prefix is CON period. So let me go to my subject and expand that one last time. CON period is my prefix. Meet is going to be my abbreviation. So these naming conventions are very, very useful, especially as you begin to build out your library. So here at TextExpander, we use our forward slashes for our slashes for our links that we share. We use SUP for support, MAR for marketing, and things of that nature. So I know we get a lot of questions about how do we name our snippets. Definitely taking a look at who's using the snippets, what they're using them for, and then create prefixes based off of those to help you easily use them in the future. So we've covered our group settings just now. And before we are heading towards the end of our webinar, I want to go through one last thing, which is our TextExpander preferences. I know I discussed them briefly a few times when I was working with our content menu, so I want to touch on that briefly. So here, notice our expansion preferences, and this will, you can choose here when your abbreviations expand. So during this webinar, we have had our expansion preferences set to immediately when typed. So as soon as the last letter in our abbreviation was typed, those abbreviations were, that abbreviation was expanded. However, you can also choose to have your abbreviation expand at a delimiter. So delimiters are keys that you can designate to make your snippet actually trigger. I prefer to use the immediately when typed because it gives me a nice seamless feel, but I understand that a lot of people also like to be able to make an action or make something have an action, and using a delimiter will allow you to do that. So if you select to expand your abbreviations at delimiter, you can select those delimiters or those keys. And in this event, if I were to choose this delimiter as a space, my abbreviation will expand once I enter in the abbreviation and then select and then add space. If you decide to use keep delimiter, that delimiter or that key that you select will remain in place after the abbreviation is selected. If you would like to remove that abbreviation after it's selected, or remove that delimiter after it's selected, you would select at delimiter, abandon delimiter. So you would still have that key that you would have to hit in order to expand your abbreviation. However, that delimiter that you selected will no longer be present. I encourage you all to take a look at our preferences, because it's a great way to make TextExpander work the best for you. And things like being able to select your content menu is really important. Being able to choose which case your TextExpander or your snippets expand in is very important. And it really helps me know that I'm using TextExpander to the best of my ability, and it's making me work even faster. Before we get to questions, I want to show you one last feature of TextExpander, which is extremely helpful, especially because I mentioned a few times about being able to search your snippets easily, and being able, and for other people who didn't create those snippets to be able to find them easily. We have something called inline search. Inline search will allow you to search for your TextExpander snippets or abbreviations from whatever application you are currently in. So sometimes I'm writing an email to a customer, and because I have so many different snippets, I forget which particular one I want to use for this case. So I can use on my Mac, I can use command / and it'll pull up this search here, and I can search any keywords. So I can search meat, which will bring me to the meet and greet one that we created today together. And you can select this, and it'll actually expand the snippet for you. So inline search is a great way if you have any keywords within the snippet to search for snippets that you may have forgotten. And this is why I stress the importance of being able to have a really great label, because it's going to come in handy when you want to search for those snippets. So I mentioned that it's command / for Mac, it's control / for Windows, and it's going to be control period for Chrome. So let me get to our recap, because we are nearing the end of our webinar today before we get to questions. So as I mentioned previously, we've covered a lot today. And now that you have went through today's beginner's webinar, you're able to create plain text and formatted text picture snippets. You can add hyperlinks and images to those snippets. You can enrich your snippets with fill-ins. You can create and organize groups. And you can update your group preferences to make them exactly how you want them. And I am going to give you some homework after today's webinar. So after today, I want you all to take some time and to create a few more snippets, more than what you have probably already made, using the features that we went through together today. I also want to make sure that you are organizing your snippets. Once your snippets start to grow and have a huge library, take some time, add some group prefixes, add notes to all of your snippet groups, and drag and drop those new snippets that you create into them. I also encourage you to explore those group and default preferences and update them that best fits your needs. After you do some of that homework, please take some time to review this training deck. We have added them to the chat, added them to the welcome message here. So they're in a few different areas here where you can have access to the training deck. Also, be sure to share this training deck with anyone who wasn't able to join today's webinar. And also sign up for our advanced webinar. We go through a lot of cool cases or cool uses with TextExpander, sorry. And the next one is actually going to run through some JavaScript. So if you're interested in JavaScript, definitely head over to our textexpander.com/webinar and sign up for our next advanced webinar. Okay, that's all from me today. Thank you so much, everyone. Let's get meet up with Christiane and go over some questions that we have.
We do have a few questions.
All right, let's get started.
So a couple of people didn't realize that you want to download TextExpander to your device. So if you're using a Mac or a PC with TextExpander, we have a downloaded app that you'll want to download and then install and then sign into in order to see those beautiful visual bubbles that Justine was demonstrating with.
Yes, absolutely.
Great, we've gotten a couple confirmations they're going to sign up for the advanced webinar. That's great.
Oh, that's so exciting. Thanks, everyone.
We did have a question about adding future dates And that actually is date math that we will cover in the advanced webinar. I'll try and drop an answer to this person in the chat box here, so we don't use up this time with the beginner webinar for it. We had a couple people ask if the webinar will be recorded, if you'd like to answer that.
Yes, the webinar will be recorded as soon as we leave here today. It'll take maybe an hour or two, and then you'll receive a copy of the webinar in your inbox.
Right. And then we had a question. Someone asked if you could recap your tips for abbreviations again.
Oh, absolutely. So abbreviations as a whole, you want to make sure that they are easy to type, easy to remember, and they're simple. You want something that are only a few characters long, and you know that you can always use them on the fly. And going a bit deeper than that, you want to make sure that your abbreviations have a prefix. And a prefix is going to be those few short characters that you have before your abbreviation. So if you look over to the right on my TextExpander app, you'll notice that my abbreviation at the bottom is meet. However, my prefix is CON, meaning that I won't accidentally trigger this snippet if I'm typing meeting, but if I type con.meet, my snippet will expand correctly. I hope that answers your question.
Great. I think that we actually I have one more question. Can TextExpander be installed on phones and tablets?
That is a great question, and the answer to that is yes. If you go to textexpander.com, download, sorry about that, you will see here all of the, actually, did I answer that correctly, Christiane? It can.
Yes, if you'll scroll up just a little bit, you can see the gray boxes right there. See the gray bricks?
Yes,
these are the operating systems that we offer TextExpander for. Yes.
So this is a great resource to check if what you're currently running is going to be compatible with TextExpander. Also a great resource to figure out if you're on the correct version of TextExpander. You always want to be on the latest version. And here you can see where, here you can download all the different TextExpanders depending on which system you're running at the time.
Excellent. That's it for our questions. I'm just answering a couple more questions in the box, but you've covered all of our questions that we had.
Awesome, that is great to hear. I am hoping that everyone was able to learn a lot during today's webinar. And as you can see, I believe you can still see my screen. This is a pretty extensive deck that goes over everything that we covered today. There's some tips and tricks in here. So please make sure, if you haven't already, please, please, please download this training deck. It's so helpful. You can share it with anyone on your team. It has a lot of cool information on there. And as you begin creating your snippets and building out your library on your own, this is going to be a great resource for you. But if we don't have any questions so far, I would love to give everyone 10 minutes to get back or to get to their next meeting, get some water, take a breather. So one last call for questions, Christiane?
No more questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's been a total pleasure. I can't wait to see you at the advanced webinar where we cover some JavaScript. Can't wait to see you at our next webinars moving forward. I hope everyone has a great weekend, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Bye.